Good morning and welcome to the second meeting of the Interim Joint Committee, Budget Review Subcommittee on Justice and Judiciary. A couple topics we're going to cover this morning. The first one is dealing with the State Medical Examiner's Office, the Northern Kentucky, and kind of get some perspective on that. Dr. Ralston and Ms. Norton, if you all want to, just come on up to the desk, please. And then we're going to hear from DOCJT regarding a couple projects they have going on. The first being the new indoor firing range that we appropriated funds for in last session. And then also the proposed West Kentucky training facility, and kind of see where they are with that, and the study that we required as part of that, and kind of get an update on that. And Dr. Ralston and Ms. Norton, I apologize for our members not being here this morning. You have the three most important and the prettiest members of the committee here, and the smartest too. So here comes the fourth. Chairman Massey was the fourth on that list of prettiest. So what I would ask of you all today, and I know you don't have a PowerPoint, but if you've got something prepared that you want to go by, please ignore what I'm about to say. But if you could just kind of give some history of the Northern Kentucky office and some overview, and what I'd like to do with this is kind of go over the funds and the legislation that have been passed the last 2 or 3 years, and kind of see where you all are in the medical examiner's office, and what the plans are with the money that has been allocated for that office, and your workloads and that type of thing. Okay? And if you all would, please introduce yourselves for the record, and you have the floor. And thank you for being here.
I'm Rebecca Norton. I'm the Budget Director for the Justice and Public Safety Cabinet.
Okay, before you start, I need to back up a little bit. We can't do minutes because we don't have a quorum, but we do need to call the roll. So the Secretary would please call the roll.
Senator Schickel, Senator Webb, Senator Westerfield, Representative Cantrell, Representative Decker, Representative Elliott, Representative Hatton, Representative Nemes, Senator McDaniel, Representative Petrie, Representative Reed, Representative Massey, here. Co-Chair Fisher,
here.
Chair Carroll,
here. And Representative Cantrell, you moved to the top of the list on the prettiest since you walked in the room. All right, I think we do have a quorum now. Yes. Okay, before we get started, we're going to go ahead and get this out of the way. I would entertain minutes. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Minutes are approved. Dr. Ralston, I do apologize for that. Ms. Norton, you all have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Carroll. Before we begin, I'd like to thank Governor Beshear and the General Assembly for their continued support for continued operations of the Medical Examiner's Office, and as we work to reopen the Medical Examiner's Office in Northern Kentucky. It's a necessary step for us to continue to provide critical services in a timely manner and meet the needs of Kentuckians, oftentimes in their darkest moments. My name is Bill Ralston. I've been the Chief Medical Examiner for the Commonwealth of Kentucky since 2016. A brief background of myself. I was born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky, then left to attend Xavier University in Cincinnati, Ohio, ultimately returning to Kentucky to attend the University of Louisville School of Medicine. Following completion of medical school, I then entered into training programs in anatomic and forensic pathology, a 5-year training program. Following completion of that training, I was a state medical examiner for many years. During that time, I eventually left Kentucky, becoming the Chief Deputy Coroner, Senior Forensic Pathologist for Hamilton County, Ohio. During that time in Ohio, however, I remained true to Kentucky, as I've remained a Kentucky resident. And in addition to that, I and my family made personal sacrifices as I performed postmortem examinations in the Northern Kentucky office in an attempt to maintain its viability, foregoing and superseding fatherhood and being a husband. I then ultimately returned to Kentucky, becoming the chief medical examiner in 2016. Most people don't fully realize the work that our state medical examiners do, nor their impact on families, communities, and the criminal justice system. The OSME serves all Kentuckians by providing accurate, thorough, and efficient medical legal investigations of death. We perform death investigations and postmortem examinations currently across 3 regional offices throughout the state and assist Kentucky coroners and law enforcement agencies in all aspects of death investigations. Our office also addresses public health issues by identifying diseases and hazards that potentially could put Kentuckians at risk. Our work is critical step in ensuring justice and providing solace, comfort, and protection for the living. So far in 2002, we have performed 1,700 postmortem examinations across the Commonwealth. In 2021, we performed 2,786 postmortem examinations. Annually, we are involved in well over 5,000 death investigations across the Commonwealth. In 2021, Governor Beshear signed House Bill 382 and House Bill 192, which provided funding for reopening a Northern Kentucky Medical Examiner's Office through both one-time funding and continued funds. In 2022, Governor Beshear signed House Bill 1, which reauthorized the one-time and continued funding from the previous year. It also authorized for a lease for the necessary office space and appropriated funds for increased salaries and additional staff that are necessary to be able to continue and expand operations. Reopening the Northern Kentucky office will have positive impacts throughout the Commonwealth. Without this office, cases from Northern Kentucky are sent throughout the state, increasing caseloads on existing regional medical examiner's office that are already over capacity. The Northern Kentucky location will provide year-round accessibility and anticipates receiving well over 500 examinations annually. For grieving families in this region, it will reduce the need to transport their loved ones 100 miles or more to the Louisville or Frankfort offices for examination and back home prior to the funeral and burial. Law enforcement and other investigative agencies will also save on associated travel expenses and resources. In order to open a new office, we must first be able to staff it. If we were to open a facility without having the proper staff, taxpayers would be paying for the operation of an empty building. Securing staffing ensures that we are able to open the facility and be able to staff it, saving the taxpayers money. Recruiting and retaining qualified and talented staff is a key priority for the Office of the Medical Examiner, both at our current locations and at a Northern Kentucky location. Not many people could do the work that we do. It requires physical and emotional fortitude in addition to the years of training and experience. I'm proud to report that Governor Beshear and the Personnel Cabinet have approved increased salaries for medical examiners and autopsy technicians, which went into effect yesterday. The approved salary raises support the operation of current offices as well as the establishment of the Northern Kentucky office by making sure that we are now competitive with other states in the field where there is already a shortage of experts. Increased salaries will benefit the OSME and the Commonwealth by providing continuity of service and increased productivity, reducing delays in local cases and response time. It also reduces caseloads per doctor, which keeps us within the guidelines set by accreditation standards. Fully staffed and operational offices, including one in Northern Kentucky, are essential to the work that the Medical Examiner's Office provides Kentuckians every day around the clock. With that, I'd now like to introduce Rebecca Norton, the Budget Director for the Justice and Public Safety Cabinet, who will talk about the budget and the finances.
Good morning. Thank you for having us here today. I'm going to go through some of the most recent legislation, the House bills that have passed, and the budget line items that are specific to the Medical Examiner's Office, and where we are with those and what the status of those are today. So legislature passed House Bill 192 during 2021, which appropriated $50,000 in 2021 and $325,000 in 2022, and that was for the realignment of staffing to address caseloads. The medical examiner's office used that funding to convert two part-time positions, two part-time medical examiner positions to two full-time positions. So when House Bill 192 was finalized in April, the state medical examiner's office had 14 full-time employees. As of July 1 of 2022, we are up to 19 full-time employees. So as funding has become available, we have worked to add additional employees to support the caseload. 2021, House Bill 192 also included an appropriation of $900,000 in restricted funds to support toxicology needs. The medical examiner's office utilized that appropriation to accept funding from the Office of Drug Control Policy to pay for toxicology testing during FY22. In 2021, House Bill 192 and House Bill 382 appropriated a total of $3.9 million for the purpose of establishing and operating the Northern Kentucky office, and that includes $1.8 million of funding for one-time costs. 2022 House Bill 1 continued the appropriation, and it also included the increased funding Dr. Ralston referenced to provide competitive salaries for staff throughout the state, as well as in the Northern Kentucky area, and it also provides funding for additional staff to manage the overall caseload of the state medical examiner's office. So the $1.8 million in one-time cost funding will carry forward into FY23 per House Bill 1. When looking at our final numbers for FY22, it does show that the medical examiner's office had $3.9 million unspent in FY22, and that's inclusive of that $1.8 million. So those funds to establish and operate that office were not spent in the previous year, and they were continued into the current year. Justice Cabinet submitted a request, as Dr. Ralston referenced, to the Personnel Cabinet for approval of proposed salaries and additional positions using the increased funding from House Bill 1. And that proposal did include a comparison of salaries for pathologists and autopsy technicians within Kentucky and within surrounding states. Those increases were made effective yesterday. The salary increase brings current pathologist salaries to $236,000 and autopsy technician salaries to $50,400. Justice Cabinet and Office of the State Medical Examiner also requested 12 additional positions, and that includes being able to convert 6 of our contract positions to full-time employees. And we have actually begun the process of converting some of those positions, as well as advertising and interviewing for additional positions that are located currently in the 3 established offices. Justice Cabinet has also requested an analysis by the Personnel Cabinet to determine if the autopsy technician pay grade can be increased. That would be to ensure equitable pay for those that might be hired after those current year increases took effect yesterday. Their current grade is an 11, and so that limits their midpoint. If we bring them in at midpoint plus 5% after their probation, that limits them to $44,000. So we would like to be able to get them to the point where they would be have a level of equity with anyone who was able to receive the increases yesterday. And finally, House Bill 1 authorized the Justice Cabinet to establish a lease in FY23 for the new Northern Kentucky Medical Examiner's location. We're working closely with the Finance and Administration Cabinets, Department of Facilities, and Support Services to determine the best method for procurement of a lease space, as well as the pretty significant subsequent fit-up that would be required for that space. A request for space has been developed with the assistance from Real Properties and DECA, and this request has been based upon our current offices, standards for a safe and functional medical examiner's office, as well as having enough adequate space to meet the needs of Campbell, Boone, and Kenton counties, as well as the surrounding areas. We're exploring all possible options in the area, and our intention is to prioritize, both accessibility for coroners as well as suitability of the building for operations. So I think that summarizes the previous budget information. Is there anything that I might have missed?
No.
And so this issue and with the funding that the legislature appropriated covers different areas. The reestablishment of the center, the office in Northern Kentucky, and then initially the reallocation, the restructuring to address current caseloads. So can you speak and kind of focus in on, with the funds that were appropriated, what have you all done to make adjustments until the Northern Kentucky office is open? I know there were some hires of contractual folks, but talk about caseloads. Are they, I'm assuming, especially in Louisville, northern part of the state, I mean, the number of cases coming in is not declining. Madisonville, I'm not sure. I would venture to say that's the case there also. But can you talk about any realignment that you all have done to address the caseloads?
You want me to address that, or you want to address that?
I can fill in.
Well, what has been done is using that funding. Certainly, we have now created salaries which will give us the ability to retain current staffing. To be quite frank, the salaries prior to receiving this funding were at the level that we were about to lose numerous staff, both forensic pathologists and autopsy technicians. So that allowed us to retain that current staff, as well as Rebecca pointed out, we have increased the number of staff. Our staffing was well below nationally accepted levels, and so we've added autopsy technicians and forensic pathologist positions at all locations, which we are currently recruiting for. In addition to that, there is funding that has been set aside in anticipation of hiring appropriate staffing at competitive salaries in the Northern Kentucky office when a location is identified. The numbers, as you said, Senator Carroll, are not decreasing. I don't have specific numbers. It seemed to kind of grow exponentially a few years ago, and we've remained consistently at the 2,800, 3,000 cases per year level over the last several years across the Commonwealth, with increases at virtually every office. And so that's what we've currently done in terms of staffing. It was an addition of staffing to address those caseloads and put Kentucky within kind of the national standard of staffing numbers and salaries.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Senator Schickel.
Thank you all for being here, and it's great to see on the subcommittee we have great representation from Northern Kentucky this morning, and I know this is a topic that is very much on the minds of people in Northern Kentucky, especially our coroners and law enforcement. What is the when is the facility in Northern Kentucky projected to be open for business?
I think ideally we would like to open it as soon as possible, but I can tell you that we're exploring multiple options, or Real Properties has been in contact to explore multiple options for locations, and I think we're going to try to have to balance both space and feasibility along with a timeline. So hopefully we can find an option that is kind of a good balance of both of those things.
And if I might add, the recruitment of staff will probably be the largest hurdle that we face. There currently is a national shortage of forensic pathologists, people like myself, those that we would employ to do the postmortem examinations. I looked earlier this week at the job board, if you will, for forensic pathologists. There's 51 positions across the country, many of which are within the region, the 7 contiguous states. And we're talking about a workforce nationally of less than 400 people. And so, 1/8 of the workforce could pick up and leave tomorrow and be employed somewhere else. That will be our biggest hurdle.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Thank you again, because this is great news for us. We had legislation in General Assembly. We passed that legislation. But again, I ask you to give me a frame of reference here. Are we talking a month, a year, 6 months? This is a rather urgent situation, and we would just like to have some sort of time frame of what we're talking about to get this facility online.
Just based on where we are with looking at locations on a starting basis, I don't know that I would be comfortable give you an accurate timeline. But as we move towards that, I think we would be happy to provide a more accurate timeline once we have a location secured and we can get a approximate timeline on how long it will take to fill it with equipment and do the necessary fit up. And I think based on that information, we'll be able to start advertising for hiring as soon as possible once we know that. So we'd be happy to follow up with you and provide that. Unfortunately, I don't know that I can give you a very concrete number.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I have to tell you, it's rather frustrating because we've been at this for a while now. The legislature has done what it was asked to do, and for you not even to be able to give us a rough time frame that I can go back to with the coroners in Northern Kentucky is rather frustrating.
Can you all talk a little bit about the type of facility that you're looking for? What are the requirements of this facility? And I know that initially the office that the facility that the office was previously in is no longer available, correct? And does it have to be in some type of medical designed building facility? What are your needs in that area?
I'll let Dr. Ralston talk specifically maybe about the requirements for the buildings. There's some very specific needs as far as fit up and ventilation systems, things like that.
Well, certainly the building itself would need to be of an appropriate size, or the structure or the facility would need to be of an appropriate size, which recommendations and space requirements have been provided to Real Properties, and based upon our current offices as well as scientific studies and literature, as well as parameters set by a National Institute of Justice funded scientific working group on medical death investigation. The additional requirements, certainly, it doesn't necessarily have to start off as a medical grade facility, but ultimately that's what it's got to become. The ventilation has to be such, it's not your standard office building ventilation. It's not your standard office building plumbing. There's needs for walls with lead shielding for radiology purposes. The cost of some of the interior, for example, an autopsy table costs about $26,000. And we would need at least 3, maybe 4 in an office to support that size population. An X-ray machine, the going rate for the current model that is being installed in newer medical examiner's office runs about $500,000. So there are some specific needs. Certainly, those needs have been identified and given to Real Properties and the Finance and Administration Cabinet for evaluation of possible properties.
Have there been conversations with any of the medical facilities in Northern Kentucky, the hospitals, about locating the medical office there?
Well, all communications are being forwarded to Real Properties and the Finance and Administration Cabinet.
Is that a yes or a no?
I don't.
I sense a reluctance here to really address the issues. I hope I'm not correct in that, but and I'm not I'm not from Northern Kentucky. I don't live there, but as a former police officer and understanding the importance of what you all do, as an investigator who investigated many homicides, you all are crucial to the success of those cases. And there has been an outcry for these facilities, as the senator said, for years now, and now I don't sense an urgency in what you all are telling us, and that's concerning.
I would say if there's hesitation or that it comes off as hesitation, my comment to that would be that we are doing our best to make sure that we're following all of the Finance Cabinet policies and procedures for establishment of a lease, and that sort of allows or leads us to allow them to take the lead. We're certainly not the experts on leasing, and should it be determined that there isn't a state or a local government-owned property that would be suitable, or maybe it's just too costly to renovate for use, then Real Properties would have to proceed with a public solicitation for a lease. So that's why we've been cautious with making sure that any communications we have with potential, locations, that we're not giving too much information that could give somebody an advantage or that would, violate any procurement rules as far as having to possibly do that public solicitation for the lease.
Okay, Representative Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know how much square footage you would need, but I think the search in Northern Kentucky should start at the campus of NKU, where 5 years ago we opened a huge health sciences building there, and the University of Kentucky Medical School has leased out significant space in that area to educate about 20 medical students per year. I think the synergy would be great with a pathology orientation that you would lend to that institution. So I don't know where the cabinet is looking for space right now and how much they need, but I think that's where it should start. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Schickel, do you have a follow-up, sir?
I do. I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but I'm going to. Chairman McDaniel, I think, did a real good job in the budget with the legislature explaining to us what we needed to do to get this job done. We had an outcry from law enforcement and from the coroners in Northern Kentucky. Chairman McDaniel took a personal interest in this. We did this. We put it in the budget, and we passed it. And I just, for me, this is just unacceptable. Procurement rules are important and need to be followed, but we got the tail wagging the dog here. We need this lab opened, and we need it opened soon.
What do you all need to expedite this process? Is there something that if there is a special session, is there something we could approach the governor with to add to that special session to expedite this?
Well, certainly, as I said, there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of hurdles to overcome. The largest of which is going to be recruitment of forensic pathologists.
And have we started that recruitment?
Until yesterday, the salaries were so poor, and I'll be frank, as of 2 days ago, the current offered salary to a state medical examiner was $126,000. I will tell you that today there is a job available in at least three of the contiguous states that start at $250,000 or more. And so we weren't going to get anybody looking. In addition to that, there's a national shortage, less than 400 across the United States, and there's 40 or less being produced each year. That's how many new forensic pathology trainees come out on a yearly basis. So we're now going to start publicizing for the additional forensic pathologists in the current offices, as well as soon as we have an estimated date of completion for a Northern Kentucky facility, our intent is to begin to post and recruit for those positions within a Northern Kentucky office.
And Dr. Austin, what's your sense with the funds that have been appropriated and the raises and the pay with these, and then the additional raises that were approved through the budget? Do you feel like that's going to be enough to get you all where you need to be? In speaking with the current staff that you have, what was their reaction to the raises that were appropriated, and do they feel comfortable with that now? Do you feel like you're going to be able to keep them now? What was the net impact of the funds appropriated that went to your staff?
Well, first, I'd like to say thank you for those funds. And secondly, those funds certainly have had an impact on the staff. We're in a very good to excellent position for retaining our current staff. In terms of recruitment, it's a comparable salary. There's some salaries that are greater. There's some salaries that are less. And so certainly what we have to do as a medical examiner's office is put forth a package that includes not only a relatively comparable salary, but a appealing a location with appeal in a part of the country that frankly I love, but we've got to make it overall an appealing presentation to any potential candidate that may be considering employment within Kentucky. But in terms of the current staff, they too are very grateful for what was provided by you all.
As far as the equipment that was in the previous location when it closed, is that equipment still available? Is it outdated at this point, or will you have most items that you can relocate to a new office in Northern Kentucky? Was it moved to the Louisville office?
Well, a lot of the equipment was moved to the current offices, Louisville and Frankfort, for in an effort to handle the increased caseloads that have risen since 2016. There is still some state-owned equipment, primarily installed type equipment that certainly, depending on the cost of new versus repurposing and removing and reinstalling, I'm sure that'll all be evaluated once the location is determined.
Okay. Representative Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Doctor, for your testimony. It's been quite interesting. I have a hypothetical question, so let's move forward into the future, and we've opened the Northern Kentucky lab, but as you've pointed out, we don't have the staff to actually staff that lab. How will you have to rotate folks from other labs into Northern Kentucky, and will that cause issues at the current existing labs? Because the numbers that you've given are pretty dire in terms of recruiting forensic pathologists. So I guess the point I would make is it'd be great to have it open very soon, as you know, my colleagues from Northern Kentucky are advocating for. But if you can't have that lab properly staffed, really of what benefit is it until you're able to get to that point?
I would agree with your final statement. If we're unable to staff it, we're paying for an empty office, an empty building. In terms of how we would staff it, certainly the primary intent would be to have the ability to hire a staff which is appropriately staffing a Northern Kentucky office. Certainly beyond that, we might have to get a bit creative, to say the least. And certainly the currently employed staff, we wouldn't be appropriately staffed to even do that. We'd be the proverbial stealing from Peter to pay Paul, leaving offices elsewhere in the state way understaffed as well. We're now getting to the level of appropriate staffing. Anything below that, so if we were to, rotate staff, if you will, but certainly hiring additional staff anywhere in the state may give us the ability to then rotate staff. And as I said, we have in the current budget allocations positions, 3 forensic pathology positions, 3 autopsy technician positions, and 1 administrative position with funding allocated specifically for those 7 positions within the Northern Kentucky office. Certainly, if we got to a point where we were unable to hire for that office, as I said, there's difficulties just beyond the shortage. Certainly, a lot of people are intimidated by being the first to join a new office or a newly established office. Certainly, we may look for other options in terms of increasing staffing in the current offices and then rotating through a Northern Kentucky office until we're able to.
And my concern is that could cause issues at the existing offices. I mean, is that a fair assessment? If this is rushed up to some extent, you don't have the staff there.
Certainly.
Okay.
Certainly.
Okay.
Which is a concern, and then that leaves the current offices all becoming defunct.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
What does your office do within the Commonwealth and maybe other states, colleges, universities to make your presence known? Being from law enforcement background, I ran across kids all the time that talked about getting into what you all do, forensic pathologists, lab, all of that. And it's you look at police departments across the state, their Explorer programs, they're full of kids that are chomping at the bit to learn more about what you all do. I can remember sending one student to the lab to do a shadow visit there. So do you all make a positive effort and proactive effort within the colleges and universities to pull staffing from those places?
Well, certainly, we if we get inquiries from students, certainly depending on the age of the individual and their level of education, we will offer them some sort of experience, which may range from just sitting down with a medical examiner, telling them what we do, how we do it, things of that nature, to full-on shadowing, if you will, experiences. So we're doing our best to promote this. Certainly, as you pointed out, there's lots of young people chomping at the bit, want to learn about what it takes to become a forensic pathologist. I will tell you, many of them, however, when you tell them once they reach their junior year in high school, they're about halfway done with all their schooling, many of them reconsider. It's quite a bit of training. Most of them don't realize that we, in fact, are physicians. We go to medical school, and then following medical school, we go through an additional 5 years of training. I was 31 years old when I got my first real job. And so many of them, while they're excited, they learn of that educational requirement. But we're doing our best to promote the field across the country. The National Association of Medical Examiners, American Academy of Forensic Sciences, are making efforts to promote forensic science, forensic pathology. Medical examiners across the country are working to try to increase the capacity. And frankly, it's something that the federal government has put forth several investigations on how we can increase the workforce within the death investigation system.
Ms. Norton, looking at the, you all said the pay raises went into effect yesterday. Do you have a timeline on what has occurred on that topic from the time the funds were appropriated until yesterday? What took so long?
I believe we submitted the request towards the end of session, or we worked together to develop what numbers would be appropriate. Dr. Ralston and his group were certainly helpful in helping us to put together sort of a justification as well as a comparison of both pathology salaries between Kentucky and the surrounding states, as well as the autopsy technician salaries compared to Kentucky and the surrounding states. So that information was put together, and it was actually revised and updated at the end of session because I believe something similar was submitted with the original budget request. So those items were put together. I would have to go back to pull the exact dates of when items were submitted, but I do believe they were submitted for approval towards the end of the previous fiscal year.
And I guess what I'm sensing from some with committee members is just a frustration. And Dr. Ralston and I know that you all want this open as quickly as we can get it.
Yes.
And I respect that. I guess the frustrating part of it is that the bureaucracy is getting in the way of that happening. And probably our next step is going to be to hear from the finance cabinet, maybe we need to address the concerns with them and what they can do to expedite this process. But very sensitive to the staffing issues. We feel that all across this Commonwealth and in the country, and I get that. And I found out in the organization that I run, we're having to be very creative on how to get folks into our organization. And I would challenge you all to do the same, to reach out to places you haven't reached out to before and create networks that you've never really thought about before. But it is a challenge. But from a law enforcement perspective, from an investigator's perspective, there's nothing any more important than what you all do because the homicides are, the top 2 or 3 most important cases that we worked as investigators, and without you all, we don't get convictions on those cases. So, your value is not in any question whatsoever. We want to help you all make this happen, and we thought we had done that with the appropriations because we've given everything that's been asked, but we're not seeing any progress. And the quite frankly, and the secretary is a good friend of mine from the time I was a little boy. I've known him. His letter to serve as a report was a little bit disappointing. It did not really answer anything. And I hope that as we move forward, there will be a more thorough, updated reports on where we're going with this, and so we can follow. This is not an issue that we're going to make decisions on and it's forgotten 3 months later. We can't. It's got to move forward, and if we need to work with the finance cabinet to expedite some things, and I know our membership is willing to do that. Are there any other questions on this topic? Very good. Dr. Ralston, Ms. Norton, thank you so much for being here, and we do appreciate your work and understand that the frustrations are not with you. We just want this to happen, and maybe we're barking up the wrong tree, as they say. But we do appreciate your work, and if there's anything that you all decide that we can assist with, please let us know. Okay. Thank you, and thank you for being here.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Rader, Ms. Linton, if you all could come forward, please. I see 2 of 3. Okay, so the update today is regarding the firing range project, and then also just an update on actions towards the Regional Training Center in West Kentucky. And I would please ask you to introduce yourself for the record, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Senator Carroll. My name is Keith Jackson, Deputy Secretary of Justice and Public Safety. I want to thank you for allowing me to present outside. I'm actually in Annapolis, Maryland at a conference. So I'm very appreciative of the opportunity to to not be in the room with you. But with that, good morning, and thank you for having us here today to talk about the work of the Kentucky Justice Public and Safety Cabinet and the Department of Criminal Justice. As stated, I am Deputy Secretary Keith Jackson. I want to first express my gratitude on behalf of the Cabinet for the legislature appropriating and for expanding training opportunities on behalf of the Cabinet across the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Governor Beshear has made historic investments in our public safety officers and agencies in Kentucky. And modernizing criminal justice remains a priority for this administration. These bipartisan investments allow the Commonwealth to continue to be a leader in public safety, and together we can make sure our communities and our officers are safer and better equipped. We've been asked to come before your committee today to provide an update on two key pieces of the public safety budget. The site feasibility study for potential DOCJT facility in Western Kentucky, and the indoor firing range located at DOCJT in Richmond. These line items that Governor Beshear recommended and the legislature provided in 2022-2023 budget will make training more accessible and more useful for those in uniform who are responding to crises every day. As you know, the DOCJT provides training to city and county police officers, sheriff deputies, university police, and airport police throughout the state. Louisville Metro Police Department, Lexington Police Department, Bowling Green Police Department, and the Kentucky State Police have their own training facilities and academies, independent of DOCJT. The state is currently conducting a feasibility study on DOCJT for DOCJT to explore adding a training facility in Western Kentucky. The study will include an analysis of potential sites, examine land, provide space and budget requirements for the necessary training, and determine the necessary funding for development and operation of additional facility. I want to be clear that the new facility in Western Kentucky would not replace the current DOCJT site in Richmond, Kentucky. Instead, it would serve as another resource for Kentucky law enforcement to receive exceptional training for future generations to come. For those law enforcement agencies located in Western Kentucky, in the western half of the state, there is an added benefit of still receiving top-tier training and remaining closer to home. The Justice and Public Safety Cabinet is working closely with the Finance and Administration Cabinet on this effort, and a request for proposal was issued and awarded to EOP Architects to conduct a study in Western Kentucky. EOP has begun the process and will have until the end of September to present their research. We had an initial meeting with EOP on the 12th, but these are preliminary and primarily planning meetings only at this time. At this time, no site has been chosen or designated as we are still determining the needs. The feasibility study will provide the information and insight necessary to determine whether and how we will move forward in choosing the location. We would be glad to discuss the results of the study once this study is completed. I will now turn it over to Kevin Rader, Finance Director for DOCJT, to talk about the progress on the multipurpose training facility, and will provide officers real-life scenarios to train in. A new and improved firing range has been an essential need for DOCJT for some time. And we're glad to see that this process is moving forward. We are also joined by Jennifer Linton with the Finance and Administration Cabinet, should you have any more technical questions on this process. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you, and I'll turn it over to Kevin.
And Deputy Secretary, I apologize. I did not realize you were with us remotely this morning, but thank you for your testimony, and I hope you're enjoying the training there. It's a beautiful part of the country.
Yes, it is, sir. Thank you.
Please proceed.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. As Deputy Secretary mentioned, my name's Kevin Rader. I'm the Finance Director at the Department of Criminal Justice Training. Before I begin, I want to provide a brief overview of how we arrived at requesting a new facility to conduct firearms training. As I'm sure each of you recall, the last inspection of the McKinney firing range, facilitated by the Finance and Administration Cabinet's Division of Engineering and Contract Administration and completed by EOP Architectural Firm, revealed the facility is at risk of catastrophic failure and has numerous safety hazards. We are thankful that the legislature and Governor Beshear's administration understand the importance of a fully functioning, multi-purpose training facility in support of criminal justice training. Governor Beshear included a new range in his funding recommendation for the 23-24 budget, and the legislature created a line item budget to make it a reality. As each of you know, House Bill 1 allocated $28,536,000 in FY23 bond funds for a new indoor firing range. I'm pleased to report that progress is already being made. The project to build the new indoor firing range is still in the design stage. The design schedule is anticipated to be completed by March of 2023, and we anticipate that construction can begin in July of 2023. DLCJT held an initial meeting on July 15th, where the program was reviewed as it was presented in the master plan. DLCJT met with EOP architecture firm's internal consultants and is currently reviewing program requirements to determine if they are still applicable to DLCJT needs. A second meeting was held in late July to discuss specific design plans and needs. DLCJT training operations staff were included in this meeting, as they will be the ones conducting training in the new facility. This was the first of numerous design meetings that will continue over the next several months. We are pleased to say that we're on schedule, and every step taken so far is, of course, part of the regular process for a project of this nature. We're on target to complete by our anticipated deadlines. Of course, one of the most critical components of this project is securing a site location. DLCJT is working on the land transfer from Eastern Kentucky University alongside Finance Administration's Division of Real Properties to finalize acquisition of the property where the new range will be built. We are extremely grateful for our strong partnership with EKU. They've been very supportive throughout this process, and without them, we would not have a location for the new facility. The new $28 million multi-purpose training facility will include a 50-yard, 30-lane firing range designed for officers to learn and practice de-escalation and interpersonal communication skills, critical decision-making under stress, alternate response to potential deadly force encounters, team tactics, and less lethal responses. These new features will save ammunition cost, allow training to be more intensive and specialized, allow for night training during the day, and ensure officers are able to protect the public and themselves. This gives the training academy more classroom and instructional space without causing any noise disruptions to the neighboring university and hospital campuses. The new indoor firing range and training space will provide officers with real-life scenarios to prepare them for what they will face in uniform, and is unlike any other training in the Commonwealth. Again, we would like to thank you and the Beshear administration for recognizing this need, and we're excited to see the benefits that this will provide to Kentucky law enforcement. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Deputy Secretary, can you talk a little bit about, with the proposed site in West Kentucky, I know the architects will be looking more at facilities and designs and that type of thing. All the other issues that you spoke about within the feasibility study, the need, the cost, as far as staffing, who is taking care of all of those aspects of this review?
So we are looking at it as an initial planning standpoint, working with the staff of Commissioner Gillick. to identify all those the issues relative to the new potential training facility. We're meeting. We've been meeting consistently in preparation for the decision once we identify the location and understanding the impact of placing the facility in Western Kentucky. When we look at this is a legacy build for Kentucky. When we look at the operational and the generational impact that it will have, we want to make sure that we get it right. So we've been intentional about reaching out to the sheriffs and departments in Western Kentucky. We've had DOCJT had already done a study. We did a follow-up survey with the chiefs and sheriffs in Western Kentucky, and got we have some numbers that will allow us to in the planning process determine the impact that it would have on the training. One of the primary purposes or reasons why this occurred was the distance and the travel that departments had to send their officers and basic trainees 2 to 3 hours across, in some cases 4 hours, and the far parts of Western Kentucky to Richmond, and it had an impact on their operation along with their administration. So when we look at the direction we want to go in, we want to ensure that we are being positive in the impact that it has on the chiefs and administrators in the Western Kentucky area. So on the 23rd, we'll really delve into and be able to answer those questions for you. I think we're looking at October once the feasibility study is completed, and then we're hopefully have an opportunity to come back and present to you some finalized numbers for that come out of our planning process over the next 30 to 45 days.
Are we still primarily looking at the site in Madisonville and taking into consideration the plans that they had proposed?
Yes, sir. That has been the focus area, Madisonville. I personally have been in contact with Mayor Cotton and the executive, judge executive in that area, Madisonville, Hopkinsville area. So that is, I'm Hopkins County. I apologize. I was stationed at Fort Campbell, so you think I would know it by now. But yes, we have been in direct contact with the mayor, and that has been our focus. We're down to 2 sites right now. I can say that, and we're determining whether those are feasible for the future site. Yes, sir.
Okay. In the future, and I love this idea, and there's a lot of support in our part of the state for this, especially with the local governments and the chiefs and sheriffs, and I am supportive of it also. I'm still very hesitant looking at all the costs that are going to be associated with this, and in particularly, I look at it in the future once if we move forward with this and we make the commitment, it gets built, I can see very easily the next stages of this will be, well, the West Kentucky Academy doesn't have this or this that the Academy that Eastern has, and we're going to have 2 campuses that are going to end up mirroring each other, and if we don't, there's going to be an outcry from the western part of the state that our training's not as good. We don't have this, we don't have that. And so I think as a legislative body, we've got to make sure we're committed to the quality and the expense that it's going to take to run this facility. And Our DLCJT Academy in Richmond is one of the top academies in the entire country. The accreditation that the academy has, the quality is second to none. And if we're going to do this, we're going to have to do it right. And Western Kentucky officers are going to have to get the same level of training and facilities that everybody else gets. And so we just need to be prepared to have those conversations when we get to that point. And I advocated for us backing up a little bit and doing the feasibility study, because this idea, if I'm not mistaken, came through the Senate and originated as far as legislation through the Senate. And but I felt like we needed to back up and study it to make sure we understand what we're getting into. We have a very nice academy, and I know there are still needs that the Richmond campus has. And so it is a long-term, expensive commitment that we're looking at. And also, we have to do some forecasting into the future. I don't really think this will ever happen, but is it possible that we get to a point to where we're caught up? We can't foresee 20 years in the future, and we're running two academies that aren't running to their full efficiency. That's not going to be a good situation for the state government should that happen. So I just think there are lots of levels of this that we have to consider, and I want to see it happen. If if it ends up just being for regional in-service training, okay, but I know that the regional trainings are taking place as it is at various facilities throughout Western Kentucky that I'm familiar with, and I'm sure all over the state. So I don't know that the need for a facility specifically for the regional in-service training is necessary. But I know at Paducah PD we host trainings all the time there. We can do driver training with the airport's help. We can do firearms. Murray State has facilities. Western has facilities. So I think there are facilities all over the state that can accommodate regional in-service. And I know that's kind of the first phase we're looking at for this facility is for in-service, and then looking at more of a full academy. So those are just the thoughts that I've had, and I have to compliment the chief in Madisonville and the folks there in Madisonville for the work they've done getting this idea to the point it's at. Quite honestly, when the first time I heard them speak, they came down to Paducah and they proposed it, and my first comment was, it'll never happen. And it gained some traction quickly, and I think, and I see the need, I see the value, but as an investment for the state, there's a lot of information that we need to be able to make those decisions, and I appreciate you all's efforts, and I guess I'm surprised that you all are able to get the feasibility study done that quickly. I expected it to take a year at least. Can you comment on that a little bit?
Yes, sir. When we initially had the legislation passed, one of the things, probably don't know my background, sir, but I was a former fire chief, and I'm also a retired lieutenant colonel. So that makes planning, and I was always an options guy. so that was one of the things that we wanted to make sure that this process was done correctly, and so putting on both hats, we kind of pumped our brakes on some of the things that we were trying to not get ahead of you and your desires, and especially not ahead of the governor and what he wanted as we move forward in this project. And so, on Tuesday, one of the things that I hope that you will feel comfortable about is that we are presenting. I presented a number of questions that you've asked that the staff and administrators at DLCJT will have to answer. Among those questions are, like you said, what are we going to focus on? Is it going to be a full-blown training academy, or are we going to look at just doing regional in-services? those are questions that need to be answered. How do we employ the trainers there in those areas? Are we pulling from our own staff, or are we going to recruit from Western Kentucky? Those are just some of the early on questions that I'm presenting to the staff. We are moving, like I said, a generational type training facility to Western Kentucky, and in that, with not having the support of Eastern Kentucky University, moving forward, how do we now take over that facility? And like you said, it's an investment. It's not only an investment in people, but it's an investment in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. As we move forward, at this conference I'm at, it's one of the things we're talking about is recruiting and retention of officers, training of leadership, and providing the guidance that chiefs and sheriffs need to move, creating efficiencies. Creating efficiencies in policing now is big because we're asking law enforcement to do more with less personnel. And so, those are the things that the tough questions that need to be answered and asked. And I know you as a former law enforcement officer understand that. And I'm hoping that you understand that we're going to, we're probably going to ask for some leniency and some to be country. And so with the permission of the governor, we will train us, we're trying to make right and do the right things, and ultimately when we're assessed that we got it right. We're going to have to fix and adjust, but my mindset is that we're looking 20 years down the road, as you said. And if we're not 20 years down the road, then we're wrong. So I hope that answers your questions and gives you some comfort in what it is that in the direction that we're going in as we plan this process.
It does, Mr. Secretary, and thank you for that. Are there any other questions? Deputy Secretary, I have one final question. I noticed that you are in a hotel room and your bed has been made. Did you do that, or did you call in housekeeping this morning? You don't have to answer that.
I still square, sir. I still square.
All right. Thank you all so much for being here, and I appreciate the information. And it is, from a law enforcement perspective, I'm grateful for what we're doing with the firing range. And again, that quality of training is second to none, and it has never been more important than it is right now with what our officers are facing throughout this Commonwealth every day. They're at higher risk than they've ever been at, and that training is crucial at this point. And we get quality training there, and I just want to make sure that continues. But in West Kentucky, we are excited about the possibility, and again, it's just an expense. Looking at it from the seat as a state senator and responsible for the whole state, as part of my responsibilities, we have to be careful about the commitment we're making, and make sure we understand that. But I appreciate Deputy Secretary's work and you all's work on getting us the information we need to be able to make those decisions, and we do appreciate it. I noticed the memo went out to make sure that the governor gets as much airtime as he can during committee meetings. So I would maybe ask the LRC staff if we could start billing him for commercial time. It might be appropriate. If there are no other comments, questions, when is our next meeting? Okay. All right. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. We stand adjourned.